Welcome to itdesk.tv. Now today we're going to be talking about algorithms and trace tables. Now the question came in, accept length and width from a user 5 times. Calculate the area each time and display to the screen. Then display the average of the 5 calculated area values to the screen. Create an algorithm and a trace table for the problem. Now, whenever you get a question like this and you need to create an algorithm, the first thing you have to do is to decide what is it that we need to use in the algorithm to solve for this problem. It says accept length and width from a user 5 times. Now, as soon as you see that, you should be thinking loop, because you have to accept something from a user 5 times. You have to place that into a loop. It says you'll accept the length and the width from a user. So those are input type functions using input devices. So the user's more than likely using the keyboard to type the length and the width, and you're going to accept it into your program 5 times using a loop. So whatever the loop is, it's going to be 5 times that it's going to happen. What's the next thing that it asks? Calculate the area each time and display to the screen. So the second thing you must think about is, what is the formula for calculating the area? Length times width equals the area. So when you accept the value of the length and the width from the user, you must calculate now inside the program the area and then display, which is an output, to the screen as the problem says. Now when the 5 times are over from your loop, it says here, display the average of the 5 calculated values to the screen. Now the fact that it asks for you to display the average afterwards, it simply means that whatever you were accepting and calculating initially has to be stored somewhere in order for you to have any type of value available to calculate the average. Remember, the average must be whatever the values are in total divided by the number of times that you looped to get an average. So there must be some variables available to be keeping or holding these values each time the loop goes around. And then it says create an algorithm. So let's look at the algorithm, how this is created. Now, it's important to remember what an algorithm is in the first place. What's the purpose of an algorithm? Now, when we do software or programming, information technology, there are various programming languages that can be used to create programs. The algorithm is like a blueprint, where I can take this blueprint of a house that I needed to create or to make, and I can make the house over in Kingston. I could also take it and bring it over into Mandeville side, or Manchester, Montego Bay, Westmoreland, St. Mary. Those would be referred to as the different types of programming languages. The place or the language does not matter, but the blueprint, the plan, is the algorithm that makes it happen. So this is how we would start a problem like this. Start. We would create a variable for the total area. Because remember, the problem in the end, we need to calculate the average. We will also create another variable for the average, and we'll initialize them and make them 0. We will create a loop, and you can choose whichever loop you want, whether it's a for loop, a while loop, It just depends on the language, but a loop will let whoever is programming this know that it requires some type of loop, whichever one applies or the best one to use in that scenario. And the loop must be 5 times, so it must start at 1 and end at 5 as indicated here on the screen. So you begin the loop. The input, because the user is the one who's going to put it in, it must accept it. Enter the length. Now there's a variable that must be created to store the length. Why? Because we are going to calculate the area at the end of this loop. So we get it from the user via the input and we store what the user gives into the variable that's called length. There's another input request. Please enter width. The user enters the width and it's stored into a variable called width. The next step, there's a variable called area, which is now length times width. So now we have the area based on what the user's input, and then we output the area now, this string area is, and we give the area, which is the variable area here. That's what is displayed or output to the screen for the user to see. Now at this point, we are in the first loop, the first of 5. Now, because in the end we'll have to calculate the average, we need to keep adding the values or storing the sum of all the areas as we go. So total area that was initially set up and equal to 0, at this point we are saying total area is equal to whatever is contained in total area so far plus the new area that we just calculated and displayed to the screen. So at this stage, we don't know what it is, but it's going to keep increasing as we go. Now the reason why we declare the variable outside of the loop is because we're going to have to use the variable when the loop is finished. If we declare the variable inside the loop, when the loop is finished, we can't use that variable anymore. That's how programming languages generally work. So at this point, it keeps looping through, it keeps adding to whatever is stored in the total area. When the loop ends, okay, when the loop ends, we're going to calculate the average. And remember, the average was declared outside the loop again, and it was 0. So now average is equal to the total area, all the areas calculated so far inside the loop, divided by what? The loop count. And the loop count was at this stage, remember, if it went through 5 times and it finished, at the end of this, the loop count is 5. So the total area divided by what? The 5, which is going to be the loop count, will give you the average. Now we're going to output average is, and we output the variable, which is now average. Then we stop the program. That is the algorithm right there. Let's have a look at what the trace table will look like. Now remember, a trace table now is just to show you each step of the way what the values or the variables are in the program, each step. So at the first, the total area as indicated in the algorithm was 0, and the variable for average was also 0. So here we indicate all the variables: loop count, length, width, area, total area, and average. And the first thing that we did was make these two zeros. The next step, the loop count is now 1. So on the first loop count, we accept a value of length and width from the user, and I input values in here, 10 and 5. At this point, the area is length times width. So the 10 times the 5 is equal to 50. Now, remember, total area is whatever total area was plus the new area that you just calculated. So at this stage, total area was 0. And so when the loop ran the first time here, 1, and we calculated the 10 times the 5, the area became 50. And so the total area would have been the 0 plus the 50. So total area at this point was 50, or is 50. The output, as we said from the algorithm, area is and give the number. Here is the output over here. Area is 50 according to this. Let's do the next step. Next line. Okay. Now the loop count is now 2, because remember, the loop is going to continue till it gets to 5. So the 2 when the loop count goes to 2, I entered 8 as the length. Please enter length 8. Please enter width. I put 4. So it's going to say 8 times 4, 32. And so the total area is going to be whatever total area was at the time plus the 32 that I just calculated right now. So it now becomes 82. And then it's going to output to the screen for me that the area of 8 times 4 is 32. And that's how I'm keeping track as I go. The third loop, because remember it's a loop, I say it again, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm showing you at every step of the way what's going on. It's going to ask again, enter length, enter width, and I enter 6 for length, 3 for width. So now the area is going to be, according to the program, 6 times 3, which is 18, and the total area is whatever was in total area plus the new area. So at this point, total area was 82. The new area calculated in the third loop is 18. So the total area now becomes 100, which is the 82 plus the 18. Then it displays to the screen, area is 18. Right? So I'm keeping track of the area and keep adding it. Okay. Fourth loop, 15 as the length, 5 as the width. I entered that from the user. It's 15 times 5, 75. That's the area. What's the total area? I have 100 in total area so far, so it's 100 plus the new area that was just calculated, 75. So the total area now is 175. And I output to the screen the 75, which is the 15 times the 5 for the user to see. I hope you're understanding this as we move. The loop count is now 5, which is the last loop count. 10 and 6, and I do the same thing. 10 times 6 is 60. The total area must be whatever was in there at that point, plus the 60 is equal to 235. And I display to the screen that the area is 60. Now, the loop ends. You notice it goes to 5. There's nothing for loop anymore here. What's the next step? To calculate the average. Now, the average is total area divided by loop count. So here's total area at this point, 235, divided by the loop count at this time, and it's equal to 47. So average is 47, and we are to display the average to the screen. So average is the output column, average is 47. And that's how the trace table and the algorithm works hand in hand. If you have a problem and you develop the algorithm properly, you should be able to trace each step of that algorithm and show how the program is going to behave every step of the way and how it will output, how calculations will happen. And when you do it like this, there's no way you can go wrong. You can then take this algorithm, this trace table, and go program it in any language that you choose. And you should be fine. You could use Python, C Sharp, Pascal, it doesn't matter what the language is. Algorithms and trace tables are not language specific necessarily. If you make them like this in general, you can then apply them to you can use any programming language and develop a program based off these charts. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe as we go through these topics for CSEC. itdesk.tv, unlocking doors.